One of the most famous historians of the ancient world claims to write an orderly account. But what if he deliberately scrambled his timeline to make a theological point? The author of Luke Acts didn't just record history. He cut his sources apart, inserted new material, and rearranged everything to serve his message. Today we learn to spot his fingerprints on the text. Here's the key concept: a seam. In textual criticism, a seam is the visible joint where an editor cut and rejoins source material. Think of it like splicing film. When you cut footage and insert something new, careful viewers can spot where the original scenes were separated. Luke left seams in Acts. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. Let's examine the clearest example. Open Acts chapter 8, verse 4. It reads, "Now those who were scattered went from place to place, proclaiming the word." Now jump ahead to Acts 11, verse 19. Now those who were scattered because of the persecution that took place over Stephen traveled as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch. Read them together, and they form one continuous sentence, same subject, same verb, same event. Luke split this passage and inserted nearly 3 chapters of material between them. The seam is visible because the two halves still match perfectly. What did Luke insert into this gap? 3 major narratives. First, Philip's mission to Samaria and the Ethiopian eunuch in chapter 8. Second, Saul's dramatic conversion on the Damascus Road in chapter 9. Third, and most important, Peter's vision and the conversion of Cornelius the Roman centurion in chapter 10. This Cornelius story is the theological centerpiece. Luke didn't insert it randomly. He placed it here to solve a specific problem about who gets credit for starting the Gentile mission. Luke's source material, preserved in that Acts 11 passage, credited anonymous Greek-speaking Jewish believers with first preaching to Gentiles in Antioch. But Luke wanted Peter, the chief apostle, to hold that honor. By inserting the Cornelius story before the Antioch account, Luke ensures the Gentile mission has 3 things: divine revelation through Peter's vision of the sheet, apostolic authority through Peter himself, and institutional sanction when the Jerusalem church approves in Acts 11. The arrangement itself is the argument. Redaction means editing and reshaping source material. Luke's redaction reveals not just his theology, but also when he wrote. Compare Mark chapter 13 with Luke chapter 21. Both describe Jesus predicting Jerusalem's destruction. But Luke adds specific details absent from Mark. These additions tell us something crucial about Luke's historical position. He's not predicting the future. He's describing the past. Let's examine the evidence side by side. Mark writes vaguely about the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not. Luke changes this to Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Mark describes general tribulation. Luke specifies they will fall by the edge of the sword. Luke adds details Mark doesn't have. Captives led away to all nations, Jerusalem trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. These details match the Roman siege of 70 CE with striking precision. Josephus describes exactly this: Roman armies surrounding the city, mass slaughter, survivors sold into slavery across the empire, the temple destroyed. Luke writes from within the times of the Gentiles, meaning after Jerusalem's fall. This places Luke Acts in the 80s or 90s CE. Jesus' ministry occurred around 30 CE. Paul wrote his letters in the 50s. Mark composed his gospel around 65 to 70. Jerusalem fell in 70 CE. Luke writes afterward, looking back on fulfilled events. He's not a prophet, he's a historian, interpreting recent catastrophe. The destruction of Jerusalem shapes his entire theological project. The Antioch passage marks a geographic and demographic pivot in Acts. The word Hellenist in verse 20 likely means ethnic Greeks, Gentiles, not merely Greek-speaking Jews. Antioch becomes the new center of the movement. This is where followers are first called Christians. Luke traces the faith's expansion from Jerusalem's Jewish origins to Antioch's Gentile-inclusive church. The map of early Christianity is being redrawn. 3 misconceptions need addressing. First, Luke isn't being dishonest. Ancient historiography operated differently than modern standards. Thematic arrangement was expected and valued. Second, orderly account doesn't mean chronological order. The Greek word can mean logical or thematic sequence. Luke organizes by theological significance. Third, we can detect Luke's sources. Textual themes, doublets, and stylistic shifts reveal underlying material. The Acts 8 and 11 connection demonstrates this clearly. When reading any ancient text, look for themes, places where narrative seems to restart or repeat. Ask what the author inserted and what theological purpose it serves. Recognize that orderly meant thematically organized, not chronological. Luke's method wasn't deceptive. It was standard ancient practice. Understanding his editorial choices helps us read his theological message accurately. The arrangement of material is itself a form of argument. Luke shaped his sources to tell the story he believed mattered most.